Hello, everyone. I'm Inez Benson, leader of WSP's National Bus Practice. Here with me today is Mike Finnern for another WSP in Motion conversation. We wanted to talk about the ABCs of ZEs, zero emission vehicles. As head of WSP's National Zero Emission Fleet Services, there's no better expert that I'd like to chat with than Mike today. So, generally speaking, where are transit agencies today in their effort to transition to zero emission buses, and where are they headed?
Well, hello, Inez, and thank you for having this conversation with me today. So here's one of the things that's kind of neat about transit. The transit industry has led all other industry segments in its transition to zero emission. They have been and actually continue to be years ahead of other segments. If you think about medium duty and heavy duty trucks, transit is years ahead of those segments. So they've really kind of led. And so, they've kind of decided, hey, we want to do this. We want to convert to zero emissions, or perhaps there were state mandates that kind of suggested that they do that. And
like California.
California is certainly one of those. When faced with a challenge, what do? Well, they figure out how to get it done. So they've put a ton of effort and work into figuring out how to deploy zero emission vehicles at fleet scale. So there's a lot of momentum in the industry, lots of money, as you know, like billions of dollars is flowing into it. And that's a result of all of the hard work the transit agencies have put into this and just sort of figure out how to get it done. So there's a lot of momentum. That said, there are certainly challenges. It is not easy. And
so what are some of those challenges, Mike?
There's challenges now. I think everybody's aware of the vehicle OEM situation. There's kind of a dearth of vehicle OEMs right now just to provide the vehicles that agencies need. Getting the energy you need to your facilities for charging is not easy. Coming up with sources of hydrogen, if your path is hydrogen, is not the easiest thing. And there's always challenges with workforce development and things like that. So, going from a couple of vehicles to 10 or 100 or 1,000 vehicles is not easy. And you have to have help in doing that. One thing we always say is you better start working on your infrastructure now. If you haven't started on that, it's too late, right? So you better get started on that. You can get the vehicles. That's kind of the easy element of this. You got to work on your infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, ordering the bus seems to be the simple part of it, but dealing with utility companies and all of that you're talking about, the infrastructure needed to power them up, can you get power into your facility? It's such a tough question, and one that can take years before you can actually come to fruition. So let's kind of talk about that whole ecosystem. So what's it going to take for transit agencies to develop it and to realize the ecosystem they need to succeed?
You really have to pull in all the different elements of the agency to make it work. So we kind of think of it as a circle. So it includes things like route modeling. You need to really understand how zero emission vehicles are going to perform on your specific routes. You need to look at the technology available. What does your yard layout look like, and what sort of infrastructure do you need to put in for charging or hydrogen? The things that you mentioned. Data is a huge element of these new fleet deployments, and I think it's something where it's kind of the next thing that folks are starting to challenges, I'd say, that folks are having to deal with and starting to solve that. You have data coming from your vehicles, data coming from your chargers, data coming from your yard operations or the energy company for utility rates, time of use, things like that. You're having to take all that in and turn data into information. And that is not an easy thing to do, but it's what's kind of the next step. It's what has to be done. You got to sort that out to be able to optimize what's becoming a larger and larger fleet. Like, you could kind of manually do these sorts of things with a few buses. As you grow, if you're small and 10 is a big fleet to you, or 100 or 1,000, you can't do it manually. You need those systems to work. So there's that, of course, workforce development, engagement of your employees. We've kind of learned over the course of time how important that is, and that's an area where agencies really need to make sure that they're putting some focus. And those are kind of all and other little nuanced elements here that all come together to represent the ecosystem, as we call it. And again, you really need to do all of those things for it to be successful. It's not like just buying another bus. You got to figure out all those other elements as they come together.
So it's really an internal ecosystem and an external ecosystem all having to merge together in order to make this thing happen, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And one other thing that I'll give out as kind of a tip. Agencies can't be. We're asking them to be experts on a lot of things. It's really not reasonable for agencies, maybe larger ones, yes, to have folks that they can allocate. But certainly not everybody can have an expert on everything. It's just not possible. It's not a reasonable thing to ask. So it really is important to bring in outside experts that have those levels of expertise in the various different nuanced areas that I mentioned make up the ecosystem to help. I think that is a good way to improve the likelihood of a successful outcome. And one other tip that I'll give to folks that might be tuning into this is pick champions, internal champions within your agency. So highlight the people that want this to be successful and empower them to make it successful, because there will be challenges along the way. You're going to have to overcome things. That's always the case when you're doing something new. But if you have people who want it to succeed, it absolutely will.
I would just add, not just internal champions, you need those external champions as well. Because as you're trying to tie into the utility company and potentially put on-route chargers in place, you need to have some external champions as well, because the environment of bus is going to change over the course of this project. So thanks again, Mike, for being here today. WSP has experts who support all the aspects of that ecosystem you talked about. We'll talk more in detail with them about their perspectives in future conversations. Thank you again, and we look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, Inez.